Good evening, everyone. On behalf of NASSCOM, I welcome you all to the tech series today being jointly held with Entity Data on financial operations integral to CloudOps. Organizations across are migrating to cloud over a period of time, and the pandemic has actually accelerated the adoption of cloud across organizations. But with cloud, there is also a provisioning of infrastructure and applications which organizations need to take care of. And there are multiple pros and cons of doing that. To discuss more on those pros and cons, how does organizations learn about FinOps and how FinOps can be a sustainable solution is what we are going to discuss in today's session. To do that, I have industry stalwarts and subject matter experts joining us today, and I will try and give a very quick intro for all of them. So we have Deepak Satya joining us from Entity Data. Joining Deepak Satya, we would have panel members, which is Sugandha Shrikant Venkateshwaran from S&P Global, Sridhar Bhagavateshwaran from Mindtree Consulting, and Kaushik Kumar from Cognizant Technologies. So with that, I will hand it over to Deepak to take it over, deliver the keynote, and also set the context for the rest of the conversation. Deepak, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Tanmay. It's indeed a privilege to be part of this session, and thanks to my fellow panelists here. And all of you who have logged in and who have decided to spend the next 60-65 minutes with us, we are really grateful, and we will try and make all these 65 minutes very valuable to you as well. Last week, some of us got together, right? Sridhar, Sugandha, Kaushik, myself, and we were discussing how can we make this interesting. And Tanmay said that it's probably a vast audience that we are addressing today who are seeing us and hearing us. And we appreciate that you people are joining us with capabilities and expertise from different views and different experiences that you bring in. So what we decided amongst four of us is we will not use jargons. We will keep it light. And we also decided that I will do the easy job of just setting the foundations, and then I will let Kaushik and Sridhar and Sugandha handle the harder part. So that is how we decided to make this interesting for you. What we'll do is we'll take about 25 minutes, and I will give you some fundamentals and the trends and challenges that we are seeing when it comes to FinOps. And then, we will make this very interesting in the second half of this hour, where we will discuss various aspects, bringing this concept to real life experience, right? How we are going about helping our clients, helping ourselves, how we are consuming this concept, etc. So that is what we hope to achieve in the next 60 minutes. And thanks once again for being with us, right? So with that background, the heading or title of this morning's tech series is FinOps, how it is integral to cloud operations, right? That is what we want to discuss and, kind of share with you. Before doing anything else, because you are such a wide audience and varied audience, we thought we will set the context first, right? What is the context all about? There have been a number of such jargons that have come and that have gone off. And as FinOps, one of those things which has come and which will wane away. Is this a fad, or FinOps is something that is here to stay? And therefore, is it a need at all, right? So I'll spend about 4 or 5 minutes to establish the need of FinOps, right? That is what we will do as a context. Starting off, it's absolutely nothing new in that statement, which is the cloud is on demand, it is scalable and self-service. No controversies at all, right? All of us, 1,000 people who are attending this will nod our heads to each of those adjectives that have been used. So what is the problem, right? First of all, as most of us know who have worked on these platforms, it's easy to spin up resources in the cloud. Well, yes, it's a feature. That is why we are going to cloud. But why is it a problem? Because we are saying it can be a problem. The problems, as we have seen, is every option and decision that we make on cloud can drive costs significantly up or down. And who are the people who are making these decisions, right? We are having our operations team, we are having our development teams who are spinning up these resources. Now, while these teams claim and can probably understand the financials, we can't, expect them to be really experts on financials. Now, what has happened to the finance team, right? They are seeing that the pricing models have drastically changed from what we were used to and what is happening now. How has it changed? Very simple, right? The per VM or the pricing which is based on egress of data or by amount of data that has been exchanged. All these things are very new to our operations today. Also, traditionally, we have our procurement functions, right? Like it or not, they intervene even before we spend our money. They identify a good vendor, they negotiate, and they make sure that we are spending according to our budgets. But now what is happening, right? All the spend is happening real time, and somebody who may not appreciate the nuances and intricacies of budgeting and forecasting, they are spinning up these resources. So that's the first point. It's easy to spin up resources, but that can be a problem. The second point is cloud enables usage-based pricing models. Yes, and we love the cost variability that cloud brings in, because we can make our costs kind of mimic the business speaks, so that we control our costs according to business needs. But understanding cloud expenses is not very easy. And many of us who have seen the cost and utilization reports, the CURs, we know that there are thousands of lines in those reports. And many times for the same resource, there are multiple line items with multiple price points. It's very difficult for us to kind of identify who consumed what. So the predictions are pretty inaccurate when we start on our cloud journey and start consuming these resources. Now coming to the budgeting process that we were used to, right? Our budgets were annual, or it was very infrequent and mainly for capital outlays, right? Again, that has changed, right? Now it is real-time expenses. So the procurement functions, the budgeting, the financial policies that we had, all these things probably are being tested by this new model that we are getting into. And with that background, if we come to the next point, which is cloud spending is absolutely increasing. Now, depending on whom you ask, people say that 90% of the enterprises have already tasted public cloud. They are either consuming some part of public cloud or already way into the journey of embracing public cloud as their de facto standards. While this is happening, we know that SaaS probably is the largest bucket where people are spending their money. But with this journey to cloud progressing and people moving to cloud more and more, the spend on infrastructure as a service is also increasing. Now, if we do not understand the insights into these thousands of lines of CURs that we are seeing, cost and usage reports, and with the cost increasing, it's like a double whammy, right? On one side, you're not understanding what is happening. On the other side, we are increasing our. So it's it's difficult. It's a situation that we should stand up and appreciate. And all this is fine. Cloud adoption is booming, and so is waste. Now, hold on. Did we not go to cloud because we don't want to waste resources? We could consume only what is required and not put money and waste resources. But again, there are several reports that you can search on. There's significant amount of waste, right? Running into billions of dollars annually. Where are these wastages coming from? Unutilized resources or over provisioned resources. Many times orphan resources, right? Whatever comes easy loses its value, right? Somebody spun something up and then they forgot about it. So, orphan resources, inefficient architecture. Now, I was telling that every decision that you make on cloud can, make your cost go up and down very easily, right? If you have chosen something which is transaction based, then the cost per transaction is very high. And if you are using so many of transactions, then you're better off probably going for something static, something where you are invested for a long time. So all those things come into play. People say that just by concentrating on some of these things, you can reduce 20-30% of cloud costs. Now, to make all these things happen, I'm sure, I have driven home the point, right? There is finance involved, there is architecture coming into play for bringing the right kind of decisions. There are executives who need to come and make decisions here. And all these people come together and they should make certain things happen, right? Why are we landing into these problems? Because lack of understanding, lack of visibility, lack of allocation of these costs. Predictions are very poor today, and we need to get predictable about these things. And this is what is FinOps, and therefore FinOps has become a necessity. So that is the case, and it is not a fad or something like that. According to all four of us who discussed this topic, it is something that is very, very necessary. So when did we start with this FinOps, and what are the standards that are available to us? It is a very recent development. It was in fact probably early 2019, around February 2019, when the FinOps Foundation was formed. And the mission of FinOps Foundation is to enable its members with standards and definitions and making developments happen. They also help organizations as to how to go about adopting FinOps. And towards the middle of 2020, FinOps Foundation merged with Linux Foundation. So now they are part of Linux Foundation. And if we see all these definitions that I have just copy pasted from finops.org, one thing that you will notice is it's not all about costs, right? The first definition, if you see, it's about understanding this variable spend model of the cloud and making business trade-offs between speed, cost, and quality, right? And I will touch upon this a bit later as well. But what I want you to understand and appreciate is it is not about driving costs down alone. That is not what FinOps is. Then what is FinOps? FinOps is increasing an organization's ability to understand the cloud costs and make business trade-offs, right? Again, we will touch upon that and harp upon that point a bit later. Ultimately, what FinOps is driving is how to get the best business value from cloud, right? So it's a combination of people, process, technology, all these things coming together and providing a predictable result to the organization where they can make best judgment about where they are heading, make predictions, and get the best choice of solutions to enable their business. So that is how we can kind of summarize what this FinOps is all about. Now, if this is what the definition of FinOps is, then how does it happen, right? By this time, we have spoken about, what are the different things that it has to achieve. Then we said it is not just about reducing the cost, it has to do several other things. So this slide that is coming up is kind of a solution on a page, or FinOps on a page, right? All the dimensions of FinOps will emerge on this slide as we go through it. Now, FinOps is not about just reduction in costs. So it acts on 6 different domains, as they call it, right? The first one is about understanding cloud usage and enabling the organizations to decipher the costs. Now, what I mean by that, there are certain components on cloud like shared costs, right? When we did some surveys and some consulting engagements, we asked our clients, how do you allocate the costs? How do you allocate the shared costs? And the answer was pretty easy. They said we park it in the infrastructure team. That was the answer. And then we asked people, right? How do you actually allocate it to who is consuming it? And do you feel there is a wastage in what you're doing? They said there is no wastage. So, and then towards the end of that study, we showed them, where that wastage was and how allocating these costs and understanding these costs are very important. So first point is cloud usage and cost. Shared cost is an example. Asset management takes a very different turn from the traditional infrastructure world that we have seen. Assets are dynamically allocated. So how to manage those things, who is the owner of those assets, how to track them, how much did they consume, how to allocate it, how to normalize the data. Right now, there are several different implementations of cloud that we are seeing. We consume cloud services from different platforms, and different platforms have their own way of providing this information. We need to normalize this. And to do all these things, we have to visualize all the data that is coming from different platforms and then show it back to our stakeholders, right? So that visualization of data and show back has to happen. So this is one of the dimensions that FinOps acts on. The second dimension is it's not about a one-time activity that takes place at the end of the month, right? It's about trending and real-time data being provided to the stakeholders. It needs to be curated for each of these stakeholders that I will speak about and provide them with information so that they can make almost real-time decisions. What are those decisions? It could be budget thresholds, unit economics, right? We are used to very different unit economics, per server, what is it? Per storage, terabyte, what is it, etc. Now with we consuming different services, right? The unit itself, the resource unit itself is changing. So how to come up with per unit economics that we can compare and contrast and go towards best practices. That is about performance and benchmarking. Then about usage optimization. I spoke about this. I won't spend much time. Cost avoidance in terms of switching off certain resources or choosing a better option that is out there. The nutshell is observability. Bringing observability into our operations is what this point tells us about. And then organizational alignment, right? Be it modernizing these processes, like I said, procurement process, whatever we are used to and accustomed to, that might not be fully suited for the new world. And even the budgeting process, the policies, the governance, who can spend how much, how to make that real-time changes, all those things have to happen in this organizational alignment. Then real-time decisions, right? Budget alerts, timely analysis, and then persona identification, who needs to do what, etc. And then rate optimization. We all know that we can have some commitment-based discounts that we can get into. If we purchase certain things as an organization together rather than every department going and purchasing certain things, then maybe there is a volume and usage based discount that we will get. How to do license management, how to build this pricing model analysis. So all these domains are covered by FinOps. Now, to make all these things happen, there are several personas who comes into picture, right? Starting with executives. We need these executives to actively participate in FinOps. Then the business, who own the budget, who are the financial advisors, who head certain functions, they come into play. Then the day-to-day operations, the product owners, they come into play. The finance teams, they come into play. And of course, your cloud architects, your head of cloud, COE, and I could have added probably 20 other roles here to make this more complicated. And more the number of personas we bring together, how easy it is to make them work together, right? So what are the principles that they should use, and how should they work together, right? Because while it is shared responsibilities, no one can substitute the other, but they all have to talk to each other and work upon certain principles. And these are the principles, right? Collaboration. All these personas are collaborating each other. Collaborating for what? Collaborating for generating business value, right? Sometimes probably we end up spending more because that is what the business value demands from that particular situation, right? We increase the cost, but that increased cost probably resulted in increased business value, be it in terms of revenue, be it in terms of customer satisfaction, whatever it might be, right? To make it happen, timely information is shared across all these personas. While all these teams can work on their own, but there is a centralized FinOps team that takes on certain decisions, and it is more federated than ever before, right? So FinOps is, the team itself is centralized. So these are the principles, and this is the solution on a page or a summary slide for FinOps. And you get various versions of the same slide wherever you go and browse for FinOps, right? So having established that, all these personas, all these domains, all these people come together to make it happen, just a quick recap, right? The journey through the cloud can be very cloudy. We know that the pricing and billing is complex. The ability to trace the costs to business units is difficult. Aggregating and normalizing across multi-platforms is difficult. And handoffs and various things are difficult in the operations today. So FinOps cannot be sitting on the sidelines and telling something, and it has to be integral to the cloud operations to address all these cloudy things that we have appreciated so far. And how does it address it? By bringing in visibility and reporting, by promising optimized utilization, and by predicting the costs, predicting the usage, predicting the performance. And that is what FinOps is solving for. Now the question is it so easy that we turn on something and FinOps comes into play, right? As you have appreciated, it is a combination of people, process, technology, all these things coming together. And the process that one has to follow is the same as crawl, walk, and run. So first and foremost, it is all about visualization. The philosophy is visualize the cost, therefore control the cost. And in this phase, or in this part of the adoption of FinOps, we integrate monitoring tools and monitoring solutions that are there, create those views, and then bring people and tools together to help appreciate what is going on. So this phase, the visualization phase, stresses upon the what. And towards the end of that phase, where we are getting handle of what is that we are consuming, what is that we are spending on, etc., we move into who is consuming and who is responsible for those spends. So that is what takes us to the allocation phase, where we come up with policies and procedures around how to allocate common costs, how to allocate by business units, bringing in integrated purchases. And now with the visuals that are available in the visualization phase and knowing who is spending, naturally the people are sitting straight and realizing that it is them who is probably spending more, right? So they are now taking ownership of how do we optimize, right? That is where probably they are starting to speak with the architects, they are starting to speak with operations and asking them, look, this is the spend that I am doing, and this is the visual representation of my spend vis-a-vis what my organization is spending. How to tackle these things, right? How to tackle the orphan resources or unused capacity, so on and so forth, or even move to better platforms, right? Moving the workloads to a solution which probably is cheaper or may give more business value is what happens in that optimization phase. Now, this is not a one-time exercise at all, right? If you do it once, probably you are green for 1 month, and then again, the roller coaster of you going into red starts. So you have to embed this process into a robust governance that is an integral part of FinOps. And the governance, such governance can be easily integrated into the standards that are there, like a well-architected framework that we usually follow in cloud governance. Now, we feel that this should be part of such standards and governances that organizations are using, right? So that is the discipline of FinOps and how it can become integral to CloudOps. It is at a very early stage, and there are several promises FinOps is making to us. Like we said, visibility. Past is all about interpretation, and future is all about our imaginations. How to make these things predictable, right? That is what it is promising. It is promising transparency by providing real-time data at all layers and from different point of views. All the personas, they are looking at their point of views, and FinOps is promising transparency and therefore better performance and therefore business value realization, right? Now, is everything fine? Is it all smooth ride? This is a great segue for the next half an hour. What we are seeing, what are the trends, what are the challenges, right? How easy it is to establish this dedicated center of excellence or FinOps operating center or whatever people are calling it, how to get the right personnel involved, how to make this org change happen, how to just emphasize on the cloud value management. That itself is a first step and a challenge that one has to cross, right? Then there are already several visualization tools. Now, some of my friends who are on this call, they are part of organizations that have glorious, glamorous, and very efficient solutions. But how to go about choosing them, right? And all of these tools, are they catering to various different models that we are adopting, right? Be it hybrid, be it distributed clouds, be it multi-cloud, be it poly-cloud. Are we doing all these things using these visualizing tools, right? Then cloud governance, I just spoke about that, how to integrate that with a well-architected governance that we may be using. And the trends are how to reduce dependency on people, how to make it more standardized, how to automate FinOps, how to bring machine learning, how to bring AI. So that is the next one. And then, the last one I already covered, how to leapfrog and be ready for this multiple implementations that we will encounter. So with that background and having told all the goodness about FinOps, established, what FinOps is promising to us, I will now look at the experts, right? The easy job is done. Now comes the difficult part or the interesting questions, right? So Kaushik, Sridhar, Suvindha, first of all, thanks a lot. We really appreciate you joining us this evening, this morning. to be part of this very interesting topic that we are discussing. And Sridhar, you have seen this world, and you in your own capacity in your organization, you have come up with many new services, and you are helping your clients, right? So Sridhar, my first question is, from a service provider point of view, right? What are the services that are being created around FinOps to handle this life cycle, if I may call it, the way we described? What are those services and how successful they are? What are the differentiators, etc., Sridhar?
Sure. Thank you so much, Deepak. And first of all, thanks for having me on this panel, and thanks to you and Tanmay for doing this. This is indeed a very interesting phenomenon, I would say, that's happening in the industry, especially like the way you beautifully articulated, Deepak, in terms of how cloud consumption has, has increased exponentially over the last few years. At the same time, it has led to enormous amount of waste. I read somewhere that almost 30% of the cloud expenses are just going into waste. I read somewhere it's about $17.5 billion, if I am not mistaken. But that's where the opportunity lies for both enterprises as well as for service providers like us. If you want to look at how we can help enterprises in addressing the overall cloud strategy that they have, right? Like you mentioned, the bulk of the opportunity perhaps lies in the infrastructure layer, and that's where the opportunity for optimization, opportunity for reducing waste, better utilization, etc., is there. So from a service provider's point of view, the way we look at it is broadly around 3 dimensions. So one is from an advisory point of view as to how we can help customers determine their cloud strategy right before they start embarking on a cloud migration approach. Can we integrate FinOps as part of that itself, right? And not doing it as an afterthought. But like we know now, many customers, many enterprise-based customers, most of them have already embraced cloud in some form or the other. So it is now how we can introduce FinOps in their discipline, right? There are many ways to optimize cloud consumption. There are many ways to optimize the cost. At the same time, introducing FinOps as a discipline, bringing together various organizations like the way you mentioned, that becomes an opportunity for us to advise them on the organizational change management, the strategy itself, the roadmap, etc., etc. That then comes the implementation part, right? So there are various aspects which you said, Deepak, in your keynote, in terms of visualization, in terms of allocation, in terms of optimization, and of course governance. Around all these areas, there are opportunities where service providers like us can create very focused services on, if you're having, for example, a multi-cloud environment or a hybrid cloud environment, can you create a predictable dashboard, or dashboard that predicts your consumption for the next month at least, next billing cycle at least, right? If not for the future, at least for next billing cycle. Can you pinpoint opportunities for wastage elimination, right? Or for cost avoidance? Can you do that? At the same time, service providers like us can help in automating the whole process. Like, for example, it could be as simple as, like shutting off dev environments after 5 p.m., for example, that the team is leaving for the day. So that's where the bulk of the wastage is. So if you see the wastage proportion, it's more into dev testing and QA environments than in prod. So prod is where you have opportunities for right sizing the capacity, and dev is where you have opportunities to reduce wastage significantly, right? So service providers like us can help in optimizing that, looking at the entire landscape and optimizing that. And then in terms of efficient run itself, so how do you make sure that you have, from an architecture point of view, that's a very important aspect. I think you also touched upon it. So we have multiple paradigms of compute that we can leverage. It could be classical VM-based compute, it could be containerized compute, or it could be serverless architecture. So how do you pick the right paradigm for the right kind of workloads that you want to run? So that is actually a challenge, right? So like one may blindly choose, well, serverless is great. I pay only by number of functions I invoke, so I'll go with that. But what if you're having billions of functions in a year, right? So does it make sense for you to go towards a reserved instance than just going with a serverless paradigm, right? So there are these kind of choices that you need to make on a constant basis. So when you decide what, right? That's where service providers can help, because business needs to focus on business, IT needs to focus on their work, but they can bring people like us in, the service providers like us in, to help them with their overarching FinOps strategy as such, and introduce this as an organizational change within the enterprise. So that's where I think it's a huge opportunity for everybody here, for enterprises as well as for service providers and consulting firms as well.
That's great, Sridhar. So just summing up, you said we can have services from service providers in the areas of advisory, in the areas of implementation, optimization, and in fact, to set the strategy itself, right? So that is a summary, right? Excellent. One follow-on question, Sridhar, a quick one, probably 10-second answer, right? Are we matured enough where we promise to our clients some outcomes, right? For example, optimization is a service, right? Can we promise, our service will give you these optimizations, probably 10% reduction, 30% reduction, whatever. Are we matured enough to do that today?
I would say yes, because there are several low-hanging fruits which are like sure shot saving potentials, right? So 10%, for example, could be certainly an opportunity to offer, but then there are probably much more than that. So we have to be very careful in what we commit, because as you start optimizing, the consumption is going to continue to increase. Because one thing which you also touched upon, we have moved the decision making of procurement to the edge. So developers can kind of spin off instances within no time. And we want that to happen, right? We don't want to curtail that. We don't want to put in checks and balances, approval processes for spinning up instances. We want developers to do that. At the same time, we want developers to be accountable as well. So that's where the opportunity to automate comes in. Like, for example, if developers have spun off resources, and if we can automate that to be shut down, say, every day in the evening when it's idle, those kind of opportunities are low-hanging fruits. And certainly, I think we are in the stage where most of the service providers can commit to a foreseeable, I would say, like volume of savings on an annualized basis. Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sridhar. Thank you so much. And Kaushik, I'm so glad that you are with us here, right? We are technology guys, we are IT guys, we keep blabbering these things, but without a finance person in our panelist, this would have been all fluff, right? So Kaushik, thanks for joining, and with your financial background, Kaushik, and the part that you play in your organization, right? How do you see things that are changed? Point number one. The point number two is, should everybody go on this bandwagon of FinOps, or are there certain thresholds or criteria? When will this become important? Is there a tipping point where it makes sense to bring this finance plus operations, which is FinOps, together? What are your views and experience, Kaushik?
Thanks, Deepak and Tanmay, for getting me on this panel. I think, Deepak, you have touched most of the points in your opening statement, but I would like to make one other statement which I strongly believe, which is FinOps implementation for an organization seems to be inevitable in its transition to cloud, because that is key. Whether it's a small or a big organization, when they are transitioning to cloud, they need a team matured enough to handle that because of the challenges that have come through. And even whether it is small or big does not matter, because for the difference could only be the size of the team and the tools that the company is using. So large organizations can have bigger teams, like as you mentioned in your keynote, that you can have representation from finance, IT, engineering, products, etc. Right? So we can see that FinOps actually has become an integral to cloud, uh, which uh, which we can neither like because of the speed of innovation to be achieved, and to make sure that we can also manage the cost. This has become a most important part in the whole journey. And if you also see, if you see how finance teams have evolved, finance teams have been accustomed to traditional IT projects, and often struggling with the variable costs that are associated with cloud platforms. Whereas if you see in application teams, they does not understand what finance is trying to do, like if you take the budgeting and the other responsibilities that they carry on. So it's no more an individual silo kind of activity, uh, and you cannot, and it is no longer acceptable for teams to consider only their own priorities, because if the operation teams does not take into account the impacts of their cloud spending, then finance will have a tough time in forecasting and budgeting the organization's cloud spend. Alternatively, if you see, if finance takes the full control of cloud spend and requires approval for every small resource, then the organization will struggle to take advantage of the speed and agility for which we are using cloud, right? And we will lose that the agility of on-demand infrastructure that we talk about. So as we know, I don't tell that it's a cost-effective method, but I always tell that it is the advantage of cloud is the speed of innovation, because that is what is driving this whole concept. It is not about cost. Cost, definitely we need to look into, but it is the speed of innovation. I will quickly touch upon some of the key criteria. If you see, cloud adoption has actually gone through a paradigm shift. All along, we have been looking into capital expenditure of big servers, big applications, and all of that, which has now moved into OPEX, which is basically the operating expenditure. And with on-demand pay-as-you-go services, budgets, forecasts, and reporting processes that we used to use successfully for years are actually no more appropriate for this variable spend. So we actually need a very multi-dimensional approach. The old native approach does not apply anymore. And then if you also see that decision making in cloud has also become distributed across various teams like technology, business, finance, even though it makes logical sense, but organizations often struggle to make that balance, the operational and the financial control balance, with the new speed of high velocity of decision making that's happening. Thirdly, you will also see the speed of innovation that I was talking about. It is easy to use cloud resources, but on the other side, your bills keep on increasing, right? And that once company understand the bills are increasing, they try to put a brake on the spend, right? And as soon as you put a brake on the spend, your innovation starts slowing down. And that was the need for bringing cloud. And if your innovation slows down, there is this looming danger of companies become less competitive. So we need to establish a balance between these two, right? Then we also see the lack of ownership. Since now this is a variable spend and everyone has access to this, you don't need those purchase orders and all of those to do this. So ownership on cloud spend is very very important. Cloud costs are actually based on cloud usage. So if you are using cloud, you are incurring cost, and thus you should be accountable for that cloud spending. So what we should also see that how we can bring that in the ecosystem. We have to make sure that we tell our engineers and their teams about the spend accountability, that they should be accountable for whatever they're spending, because it is now easy to consume resources. They don't have to go to finance and get an approval and spend months to procure something, right? And I think Sridhar also mentioned about this on the lack of visibility, which is also combined with innovation. There are a lot of wastages. Some example which Sridhar also mentioned is like dev and test resources. Like if you don't look into those, they can keep running 24/7. but actually they should be utilized only during office hours, right? So that's a very, very big expense that you can reduce if you look into that. And then there could be a classic example, like you start a project and you start using resources. Project is over, you forget on switching off those resources. So that also keeps the cost rising. Another big challenge which I have seen is in cloud environment is collaboration, which Deepak, you also mentioned in your note. It's actually a big challenge, because now you have varied teams talking to each other, but each one talking in their own language. Like finance will use jargons like usage, rates, cost, whereas engineers will use their own jargons like availability, reliability, capacity, and all of those. And when, in addition to that, how it becomes more complex when you start using the cloud service provider jargons, then it becomes more complex, right? So we also need to build some common lexicon so that everyone understands what we are talking. Finance also understands, technology also understands, product team also understands. So that collaboration is very, very important. We also have seen in forecasting cloud cost is actually a very tough job, because it's very complex. And we have seen that in some enterprises, the monthly cost actually runs into millions of line items with multiple rows and the same resources being charged with different rates. So attributing such costs to correct business unit is actually a very, very big challenge. And for that, we need to have a good account structure. We need to have a good tagging strategy before we even embark on this journey, right? And lastly, I would also say cost predictions by application owners are sometimes widely inaccurate. Without good processes in place, this sometimes might be unnoticed. And when they get the bill at the end of the month, sometimes they will get shocks to see how much this has gone overrun. So to combat all of this situation, I think embracing FinOps at the early stages is very, very critical, because it will keep the cost in control, give a better visibility. And actually, if you see, FinOps actually is an operating model that is designed to increase the business value of the cloud investment by bringing together technology, business, and finance professionals and forming a new culture. So, so everyone turns to cloud, and FinOps is focused on helping organizations to understand their cloud cost and make very informed business decisions, and that to real time. That's the key for cloud, to make decisions real time.
Fantastic, great. Thanks, Kaushik. Thank you so much. And you're already completely into FinOps. Glad to hear from a finance guy all these jargons, and you appreciating the technology and the usage, etc. Right? Now, Sugandha, right, of all the personas who are there in this meeting, right, speaking to each other, you are the most important persona, because you are consuming some of these things in your organization. You are probably getting it implemented, so on and so forth, right? So from your point of view, Sugandha, right, when it comes to the tools and technologies that are available, that are being implemented, what is the maturity, right? We talked about some promises that FinOps is making, right? Do you see all those things coming just out of the box, or you are doing some engineering? I'm sure every organization has its own nuances, and customization is required to get that data and curation of those visualization to different people. So how are you going about doing that, Sugandha?
Great. Thank you again, Tanmay and Deepak, for this opportunity. I think this is a good question to answer, because there's one more in the Q&A which is aligned with this. I think somebody was asking about AWS Control Tower as well, right? So let me start off with that as a cue. So if you look at multiple cloud providers, each of them have a very robust set of tools that allows you to, determine the best model to use, the pricing plans for them. They have the whole total cost of ownership tools that can tell you how your landscape is going to operate. And they are also going to provide you reports, around cost optimization. But what do we see in reality, right? Each of us enterprises, we have adopted a multi-cloud strategy. We have adopted, or we are naturally progressing to the hybrid cloud strategy, right? And what we want to see is this single pane view across all my resources. While each of my providers are very strong in what they're offering, how do I get a view that will allow me to, have the trends to be seen over a period of time? How will I know some of the benchmarks, like, with respect to the industries consuming, right? How am I placing my spend, or how am I placing my usage? How will I see that view, right? When you start thinking about all of that, that's when you start looking at a proper platform, a cloud financial management platform that is, aligning with some of the FinOps principles. So you introduced a FinOps organization, Deepak, and I think they have set the terminology. They have brought in various enterprises to come in and, take the roadmap forward. One thing we also notice is, I think it was Sridhar who spoke about the changing requirements as clients are transforming, right? So we may start today with a certain deployment, and there is a view for you on your spend and usage, but a couple of months or quarters down the line, you're suddenly switching and thinking, you know what, I'm wanting to take advantage of serverless computing, or hey, containers are going to be my path forward because of the way my application teams are developing. When you start thinking about that, you want to now immediately start monitoring those aspects as part of your financial spend, right? And usage. So how does a platform, a cloud financial management platform, look at these aspects, right? These principles? That becomes very important, actually. So the roadmap that a platform is showcasing to you as the cloud vendors are progressing in the capabilities and services they provide. The other thing we noticed, right, when we were looking at the various vendors out there, one size fits all is not there for sure, right? So we heard all, Kaushik, Sridhar, and you, Deepak, speak about, okay, we want to know cloud usage, we want to know performance tracking, we want to know rate optimization, we want to know how the organization processes are aligned. Does each platform offer you that? Maybe not. Some are very strong at providing you the container usage perspective. Some are very good with the reporting angle, right? So you have to pick what works for you. What is it that you're looking for at that time? And the other thing is, we spoke about, okay, I'm transforming, I'm getting to hybrid cloud, all of that, right? There are platforms which are so matured in their roadmap that they easily integrate your currently deployed resources, be it on the cloud or be it on-prem, right? So looking for those matured vendors as well to actually give you the jump start versus spending a lot of time understanding how to really study my landscape is another aspect that one looks at, and we also looked at when we were looking for a vendor. Kaushik touched on this, right? So it's not just the tools that will come and solve your problem. There are certain framework, some guidelines that we all need to also implement. And these are all suggested by the cloud vendors, but also as part of the processes that you have, you actually implement them. For example, tagging and labeling, very important. Which department is spending how much? It's almost like, the family plans we use at home. Who is consuming the most? Oh my God, who is using most of the OTT time? So
and
it's
put a
almost
quota.
like, yeah, exactly. So it's almost like that, right? So knowing who is using what is important. The whole allocation and spending aspect is important, and eventually leading to which is the right pricing plan for me, right? And one thing I wanted to share, because I was looking at, this is getting very interesting. And like you said, Deepak, FinOps is not so matured. It is a couple of years old only, right? But the pandemic has accelerated people getting on. And now everybody is going to start thinking, is really FinOps going to be of help? So I was looking up some stats, and 451 Research, which is, the enterprise technology research unit of S&P Global Market Intelligence, they actually conducted a survey among 300 enterprises, right? And what that survey showed is that 67% of those enterprises said that having cloud financial management has helped them grow revenue. And then 64% of that enterprise pool also said that it has made them profitable. And this is again based on the number of years you're spending, on the cloud as your only platform, or how you're transforming. So I think it is data as well as the whole adoption and usage is showing how FinOps is going to keep us active and is going to keep us on the right path. That's what I would say. So I think the products who are also participating in the FinOps Foundation and the vendors that you're working with, as long as you're together understanding how the roadmap is progressing, how it aligns to your journey, I think the tools and technologies out there are maturing and they are there for all of us to take advantage of.
Thanks a lot, Sugandha. And your views give us so much of confidence, because we can tell whatever we can tell, but you are consuming it. You are what it is when the rubber hits the road, right? So that is fabulous. Thank you so much. Hey, Tanmay, have we got like 5 minutes that we can go through a rapid session of the next set of questions, or how do we do this, Tanmay?
No, we have 5 minutes, Deepak. Please go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So Sridhar, a very quick one, right? So we know that it is new. We know that the FinOps Foundation has laid out guidelines, right? Nothing more than that. Now, are there any reference models, right? Like as these concepts gain momentum and more and more we implement these things, we tend to see these reference models emerging. Right. So have you seen such reference models already emerging, best practices, integration, like a well-architected, right? That is a great reference model that we all use for cloud governance. So are there any such reference models, Sridhar?
Yeah, of course. And like rightly said, Deepak, this is evolving and continues to evolve. And so whatever we have seen so far and what we have created within like Mindtree as well, is aligned with the FinOps Foundation's 3-phase framework, if you will, which is inform, optimize, and operate. So everything that we do kind of hinges around that. And so we created internally something called UAS, if you will, which is having an umbrella assessment approach as to understand where exactly an organization is today with respect to their cloud strategy as such, cloud consumption as such. And then look at how agile they are. Like Kaushik touched upon innovation being the primary motivation for many enterprises to adopt cloud. So from an agility point of view, are you having the right kind of guardrails, if you will? You don't want to be doing something which is going to shoot your expenses through the roof. At the same time, you don't want to curtail your business agility as well. So what do you do in those aspects? And then very importantly, how are you in terms of consistency? So there are elements to make your practices a little bit more consistent, right? Even though each department can come out with their own way of sourcing their infrastructure, right? Because in large enterprises where there are various business units, each business units have their own CIOs and CTOs, and they have their own preferences as to how they want to architect their applications. So there's a lack of standards that comes in the enterprise. So how do you enforce a particular standard for these kind of workloads? You go with this tier or this family of servers, for example, right? So how do you specify those kind of things? So that becomes a part of the framework. And then most importantly, efficiencies. What can you drive those? That's what we call it the UAS framework, which we came about. And again, it's aligned with the FinOps Foundation. What we're trying to do now is to integrate sustainability as part of the framework. Because we know that every server that we are provisioned on the cloud, consumes about 160 kg of carbon in a year, right? Maybe it's twice as what a regular server on an on-prem would consume. So can we make it such a way that if ESG is top of your board's agenda,
right,
and is there a way when you're provisioning servers, etc., can I give you a real-time view of how your sustainability objectives are being met? I know that we are running short of time, but I'll stop here. But if you have follow-up questions, I can take that. This is how we are evolving the framework, Deepak.
Perfect. Takeaway is, yes, there are reference models and frameworks that we are developing and available. So, Kaushik, you gave a very elaborate answer first time around, right? How things have changed and what you're seeing, etc. So, anything that you would want to add on, right? I had reserved this question for you again, right? How has FinOps helped you? You told a fantastic thing, right? People just understanding each other's point of views. That itself is probably a great advantage that you are seeing. Anything, more than what you have said that you want to add on to? As a response
Yeah.
to this question, Kaushik?
Yeah. So what I would like to add is I can tell you some of the other points where FinOps can actually help finance, right? Because for finance, this is a complete shift from capex to opex, as I was telling, right? And with this new variable cost coming in, and there are so many new cost drivers that is actually running the process. So finance teams are unable to keep up to the speed, and thereby they are losing the visibility of the spend, right? So that is a very challenging situation. If you also see, there's one more important task that finance does, which is invoice reconciliation, which has become the toughest job. Why? Because finance is not aligned with that detailed billing information with multiple granular components that are there in cloud nowadays, right? With so many SKUs and so many details, and it runs within milliseconds of charges, right? So you have huge line items over there. So FinOps can really help to perform such complex reconciliations. Allocations, it's also a very big topic, and you have also touched on that. So I don't want to again go into that because we are running out of time.
Thanks, Kaushik. I think we've already run out of time. Sorry about that. Sorry, Kaushik. And Sugandha, we don't want to lose your views, right? Very quickly, right? It's a new mindset. And although, we have skills in various pockets, it is these chasms, right, where the ball often drops, right? And that is the chasm that we need to cover off with this new mindset that we are bringing in. So how are you going about training your people or developing these capabilities to sustain the process of FinOps in your organization, Sugandha?
Sure thing. So why would we need this, right? Why would we really bring in FinOps, right? The future of work, as we're all seeing, is all about information flow, transparency, and empowering individuals. And let's say in this case, empowering engineers and developers, right? So if you take the current organization, engineers are excited, developers are excited about using the cloud. And then you have the business owners like the product managers who are very keen on taking something out to the market fast. And you do have our finance friends who are like our gateways, right? Or gatekeepers rather, trying to control or explain to us how we can optimize spend. With FinOps, what is happening is everybody is becoming accountable. So how can I, in my role, pick up something in adjacency and actually, bring FinOps into my current organization? FinOps is new to the field, so it's not like you're going to find people off in the market. You have to take who you have, add on or complement them with the skills, and then go forward. So the way we are doing this is through a couple of things: self-paced or instructor, led trainings. Our flagship program, it's called Essential Tech. It's something we say which is not a destination but a journey, and we are using the program to actually train, skill our individuals who are, say, engineers or who are product managers or who are in the finance to actually understand how the whole cloud financials work together. And I think many organizations are doing this. And the other thing that organizations tend to do is to use some of the hackathon kind of approaches to actually find out how people are thinking about cloud, right? So I'm running one such program in my organization, and I'm so thrilled to see my cloud engineers actually speak about problem statements relating to cloud spend, and they want to actually build certain automations which will help control that. So I think every organization should pick their people, create that whole virtual setup, give them the training, and also give them the opportunity to actually bring forward the whole, the principle of visibility, optimize and operate together.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sugandha. Thanks, Sridhar. Thanks, Kaushik. I'm going back more knowledgeable on FinOps after this session. I'm sure all of the participants, all of the people who have logged in, they also are more knowledgeable about FinOps now that they have listened and seen us. Tanmay, over to you. Any closing remarks, please? Tanmay, are you on mute?
No, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on mute. I said thank you, Deepak, Kaushik, Sridhar, and Sugandha for such a wonderful session. I think all of us are taking back new insights from this session. And though we have a couple of more questions from the audience, I'm not sure if you would want to take it now, Deepak. Would you want to do it now? Or would you want to take it offline?
We will take it offline in, just minding everybody's time. We'll take it offline for sure.
Sure. So we will share those questions and we can respond back to the audience with the answers to those questions. With that, we'll like to bring this session to an end. Thank you all for joining. Have a good day. Stay healthy, stay safe. Good night.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.